G'day friends, and welcome back to Painting Oathsworn. In today's episode we are going to be discussing object source lighting, or OSL. Now this is a relatively advanced technique, but I thought it was important to include a few topics like this so we can talk about some of those more challenging processes. So I wanted to incorporate both of these elements in the final colour palette for the figure. Let's get started on painting OSL. OSL is a technique that has a lot of people very concerned about approaching it, but in my experience it is a relatively easy process once you understand a few key elements. The first is that your object, that is the source of the lighting, has to be the highest value on the model. Obviously, if it is not higher than the other elements, why would it be casting light? So we have to consider that as our first point of reference. That object will be the highest value element on the figure. The second thing we need to consider is the direction of that light source. So this lantern in this instance is lighting everything around it. We need to consider that point as being the central element of where the light is coming from. So one of my best pieces of advice around painting object source lighting is what I'm doing right now, which is I am creating an area of the light that is going to be reflecting really bright and vibrant. Now you can see I've painted all of these areas already, but what we're adding on this little stage is a place where we're going to have the light be really intense and vibrant. Now we don't want this light that I've just placed on there to be brighter than the source. So I'm using a transparent color here. It's an orange fire. It's a Vallejo Model Air color. And we're going to do a couple of layers of dilute transparent paint. Now, why I've chosen to approach the lighting in this way is pretty simple. I don't want the remaining colors of paint that I've already done on this figure to get lost. I still want those to be there, but I just want them to be filtered and tinted by the actual light source. You can see what a difference having that layer of white on these little areas has made for the actual lighting itself. It looks much more vibrant in those key areas where I've placed that white. I find that shading down from our highest value is a little bit more effective than trying to highlight up, because it gives us that really vibrant and intense light that we're looking for. So here I've switched to an orange, and this is the contrast paint orange, and we're now toning down that color so this looks a little bit more like firelight. Now I think the key part of this whole process that I've done here is really that very first step where we've laid out the light reflections in white, because what it's allowed us to do is really create a transition between the slightly filtered color of the already existing elements that have got an overlay color of this warmer yellow light, and then those really bright spots of light which exist on there as well. Anytime you are worried that a color is looking a little bit too bright or a little bit too vibrant, all we need to do is just tone that down. So the way that I approach our light source, which again, if you remember rule number 1, this has to be the highest value and the brightest element, is by using fluorescent colors. So I've mixed in a fluorescent yellow into this, and we're painting this whole area with the fluorescent yellow. I find it works better when I'm using an airbrush. The color tends to come out a little bit more evenly and works a little bit more effectively. That's it. That's the extent of the approach. I think you can see already that light on the staff, on the cloak, it looks right. It feels right. It feels like this light is coming from this element. And that's because of where we've placed all of those highlights, where we added our little lights of pop light, and what that's done for selling the illusion. So we have to remember that the light source is the center of our story. Everything comes out of there, including the reflections, including that being the highest value section on this figure. So in this stage, you can see I'm re-adding some white and I'm re-adding that high value right in the center of this. Again, please keep in mind with these paint jobs that what I'm trying to achieve is a result that can be done quickly, but still looks really effective on the table. So there's no real focus on getting perfect details or making sure everything looks unreal at all stages. We're looking for a result that is really effective really quickly. And this approach towards OSL is the easiest and fastest method I've found to getting a convincing looking OSL. So to break it down, highest value point is your light source. Plan out your light from there outwards, and then use white to help those colors be more vibrant and intense and allow for those little spotlights on the other elements. That's it. It's a process that I think can be replicated quite easily and you'll get some really fantastic results. And that brings to a close our episode on object source lighting. It's one of those aspects of miniature painting that people think is a little more complicated than it actually is, but keeping those simple rules in mind will help make your figure really pop on the table. In the next episode, which is our final episode painting the heroes from Oathsworn, we are going to be painting the Warden, and we will be focusing on freehand. There's a few different elements on this figure that I've painted in freehand, and I'm excited to show how we did them. I'll catch you in the next episode. Big Dano, out.